Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hello all, welcome to episode 65 of Fire Code Tech. In this episode, we're speaking again with Kelsey Longmoore. Kelsey gives a great update on her last 2 years in her career where she was a code consultant. She worked full-time on Kilo Lima Code Community for a while, and now she is a executive director for a nonprofit. This is a whirlwind ride, and Kelsey has great pontifications and musing about content creation and fire and life safety, and many big entrepreneurial thoughts. Really enjoyed speaking with Kelsey on this episode. Check it out and be sure to check her out on KiloLimaCode.com. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. If you want to do me a big favor, go give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, you can follow us on social media. The podcast costs nothing, so if you want to do me a favor, you can follow me there and like and subscribe. Let's get into the episode.
You do. I didn't know if I was supposed to. I didn't know if I was supposed to let you do your spiel or. Okay. It's been a while. Thank you for having me.
Well, Kelsey, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Good to speak with you. Oh yeah, sorry. Just saying welcome. Yeah. You don't, yeah, no, I mean it's laid back. It doesn't matter. Oh, no worries. No problem. You don't have to say anything. Um, I'm just excited to speak with you. We were talking a little bit off air about what you've been involved with
Yay!
recently.
I think only 3 months,
It's
though,
been
not 3 years.
I think it's
It was
been
just a
over
few
2
months
years since we
in.
spoke
Yeah.
last. I think we were in the heart of the pandemic when I was talking to you, and I think you were about 3 years into starting Kilo Lima Code. And oh yeah, I'm glad I remembered. I've been wanting to tell you because I must have used it like a dozen times at least. One of the things, oh
Absolutely.
yeah, 3 months, sorry. 3 months into Kilo Lima, you had said in our first conversation, you'd said
Oh, exciting.
the phrase or the
Safe
idea,
buildings save lives.
if making buildings a safer place is the end goal, then shouldn't we be making it as easy as possible? And that's something that I really resonated with, and I have been saying ever since we spoke. So it really made an impression on me the last time we spoke. But yeah, even
Yeah, you too.
yeah, it's a good goal, and it seems like something that I keep fighting with different people. This kind of hoarding of professional knowledge is something that I think is destructive. So I appreciate that note from you, but it's so good to speak
Yeah,
with you.
it's been there's been a lot of change since we last
So
talked. When
tell
I
the
was
listeners a
talked
little
to
bit
me, I just
about
moved
what's
out to
been going
British
on for you
Columbia,
in the last
Canada,
year or the
right
last
before
couple
the
of
pandemic,
years,
so January
from
2020. I think we
professionally, kind
talked
of what you've been
in
going through in the career
maybe
evolution. It really
May-ish,
sounds
June-ish that year.
remarkable and
Anyways,
like
so I was
something
out
that is
there
truly your
doing
own.
building code consulting with a company out of BC. And then later that year, in November I had left consulting to pursue Kilo Lima full time. And then the next March, I went back to consulting because hopes and dreams don't pay the bills for very long. And shortly after that, we actually moved back to Regina, Saskatchewan, where I was born and raised. All my family's here. Just because of the pandemic, real estate went bananas. We were renting, and really, we were just meant to be home. I have such a new appreciation for it after leaving. The grass isn't always greener. So then back in consulting when I was here, and then November 2021 again, I quit consulting. There's parts about it that I liked, but a lot of parts that just didn't feed my soul. So did that, was doing Kilo for a bit, and then the next Aprilish, I joined the REM here in Regina as the executive director. So it's our civic museum and kind of a new model. And then around the same time too, I partnered with Dristone Consulting. It's a structural engineering company here in Regina, led by actually a Kilo villager, Caitlin, and a phenomenal human. And I partnered with them for a contract with the public school board here in Regina, which has turned into a accessibility study of all of their buildings. So I'm really, really excited about that. So doing a little bit of co-consulting with them, and then also this other job that I love and is very aligned with my big ideas to change the world. So got a few things going on, and still obviously doing Kilo. It had been kind of on the back burner since about April-ish. While I had some like health stuff going on and personal stuff I needed to focus on. But now we have some really exciting things going on. I brought someone on as kind of the business side because I have a lot of skills and ideas, but running a business that is sustainable is not one of them. So some really exciting things coming up that I can't really share too much right now, but Kilo's going to start moving forward with some people that can really make things happen. So on the professional side, it's been quite a bit of change over the last year and a half.
Wow, that's cool to hear about. Really neat to hear that you have been getting yourself into new areas professionally and really focusing on, putting yourself out there, trying new things, testing things. So I can really, I think that's inspirational to hear that, you've tried a couple different roles and work types and, where you've kind of landed since our last conversation is doing a variety of different professional roles that really fuel you. I think that it's fascinating for me to hear about how you kind of gravitate towards this real moral, like,
Yeah, the
position of
executive
doing good
director. I
with
have
your
no
career,
nonprofit
which I think
experience,
is,
but my
awesome
role
that
is as the
you that's a through
executive
line in
director.
what you want to
So
do with your life.
do you want me to tell you about it now?
But
Or
yeah,
do
I'd
you
love
want
to hear a little bit more about what you're doing
Sorry.
for the museum. I
Yeah,
think that's
I don't, I'm just
really
learning as I
interesting that
go.
you have kind of
Yeah, like
shifted
right now I'm
roles and
writing
you're
grants so that we have money
working
to
as
operate,
the
and like,
director, did you
I don't
say?
know, never written a grant before. So learn things as I go. But essentially, we used to be the Regina Civic Museum. So civic meaning kind of the history of our city.
Yeah, I don't even
And
know what that
I don't
entails.
know,
So
3 or 4 years ago,
you
apparently
have
it
to
closed its doors and was
explain it like
transitioning
I'm
to this
five.
eco museum model, which when some people hear eco museum, they think ecology, but it's really a tiny bit of that, but a lot more things. So we're known as the REM, and your museum without walls. So we don't have, well, I have an office that I work out of a co-working space, but we don't have a physical museum anymore. And our vision is to connect people by sharing Regina stories of the past and present. So we're finding, even though it's like a museum, it's kind of like a startup, because over the last few years, the board of directors has come up with kind of like a strat plan and vision that's very, very broad. And they brought me on, and I have a colleague she has kind of like art history museum background. And together we've been able to just kind of like pick the programs we want to start and pilot and try. So it's been really exciting to, I have that startup energy, like with Kilo. I want to kind of start things and create new things. So yeah, it's been amazing. One of the programs is I brought pen pals back. So I've been connecting schools with seniors' homes to kind of story tell around different things. And yeah, we have a few other programs that I'm not going to, I could talk forever about them, and this podcast isn't about museum stuff. So that's kind of what I'm doing there, is just finding new creative ways to connect people and also to learn about our past. Because, like any museum, people will go visit for 1 or 2 hours, and there's zero way you can absorb the information, like all the information during a visit. So we're finding ways to kind of bring
Cool.
neat little things throughout the community. So maybe you're at like a coffee shop in the warehouse district, and on the wall there's a bunch of history of the building. And then you could scan the QR code and be taken back to our website to learn about where other locations like that are. So that's kind of the stuff we're looking into. And yeah, it's very fun, and I absolutely love it. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I like that entrepreneurial spirit. You're talking about that startup vibe, or being a part of something that's new and budding
It
and
is,
kind
yeah.
of very in
I love
flux.
creating new things. And
I
actually, here
definitely
I have
think
my
that
colleague
takes a
Tennille, who
certain
she's
disposition of
we have very
individual.
complementary skill
I
sets.
don't
So I
think
have the
it's
big
for
ideas, and she
everybody.
knows how to
So
make them
that's cool
happen.
to
It's
hear. I,
amazing.
I
So
resonate with that.
we're a good pair.
Wanted to be an
Mm-hmm.
integral piece of something that is, kind of
Mm-hmm.
rapidly changing, but that's awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
that's great. That's great. Yeah, you need the yin and the yang. I find the same thing, that a lot of times that I have a real easy time with seeing the forest for the trees, but not always the best time defining a very concrete path forward and then executing. That is not always my strong suit. So I can appreciate the coupling of
Oh yeah, I guess
different
so.
skill
Hey.
sets. But I wanted to ask you about Kilo Lima, and what you have done in the last couple months, or maybe your
Yeah.
update over the last two
I
years
have big,
of
big
kind of.
dreams
I
for
know you
Kilo.
guys are still
So,
releasing
yeah.
blog
So on the
articles,
blog
and we were
side, we
talking.
haven't
I think it was
actually released
before
one
you
for about
launched the
6 months. It's been on the
education
back burner, but we're
platform
starting up
piece.
again.
So
We put
would
a
love
bit
to
too much
hear
pressure on
about
ourselves to
like
have a blog out every
what's
week.
like the
So
story
kind of
arc
just
of
once we're
Kilo
coming
Lima
back,
since we talked last,
just
and
as we
like what's
get
been going
blogs, we
on.
currently have. So I don't write the blogs. I write them once in a while. I more like to write on beyond the code, so how we could do better than the code in certain aspects. Um, but yeah, I have a team of amazing villagers. So, um, like I always say that like I can talk at phenomenal speed. So when I sit down to write a blog, it takes me like 3 days. It's ridiculous. So our villagers are across the country. So I'm in Canada, so across Canada and in different parts of the industry. So we have some like a municipal fire official, we have co-consultants, we have an architect. So getting those different perspectives in, I'm really trying to get some of the trades in, like alarm installers and sprinkler installers, but it's gonna whatever. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. So just bringing in different perspectives. So right now, I think I have about 20, give or take. And yeah, over the course of the last 2 years, we have over 100 blogs, and there is like really good technical content on there. And it's funny you say you've used it, because I don't really know how Google Analytics works, but when I look at it, there's a map, and there's lots of different places other than Canada that people are looking up the information. Because, like, when it comes to code, our codes vary, but the theories, like the theory is the same. So even if you read a blog article about fire rating of glazing here, like it refers to our code, but a lot of you still absorb a lot of information, even if it's on a different code. So that's something I didn't really expect when starting. That's been really cool to see. So our blog's been super great, useful for people. I don't know what I'm trying to say. And then we started the code school. So my vision of the code school is that anything you want to learn about code, there's a course for that. So I did the first one, part 3, fundamentals. Again, it took me way too long to put together. So I realized that my job is just to host other professionals' courses. So for the last 2 years, we've had mine, and then Code Next. They're an amazing company out of Toronto. They've produced 2. And we've had those for the last few years. And then now Code Next is putting a few more together on industrial uses, and then another one on compressed liquids. So they have someone there. She's amazing. Her background's chemical engineering. She's actually on like the NFPA 420, the marijuana standard committee. So she has a lot of great knowledge to share. I guess I'm trying to assemble really great, knowledgeable niche professionals and host their courses, because there's these amazing sets of knowledge across the country, but it's unlikely that someone's just going to produce their own online course. So if I'm trying to get the eyeballs of code people across the country, and then it makes sense for these professionals to take the time to produce a course. So over the last couple of years, it's kind of been chicken and the egg, where I have not done a good job of marketing to sell the courses. So I can't really guarantee these consultants to take the time to make the courses. And without more courses, it's hard for people to come to the school because they don't know about it. So that's something I'm trying to figure out right now, how to kind of creative solutions to that. So that's where the school's at. We've had, I'm starting to get like people reach out, like a fire department out of Alberta just reached out about the courses because they had Googled and found it, which was super exciting. But I think once I start reaching out to people again, we might have some traction. When I first did, we were only about like 6 months in, and Kilo Lima sounds like a completely made up name. So I think a lot of people thought I was just a spammer. Whereas now we have a little more trust and credibility in the industry because we have kind of so many professionals involved writing blogs. So that's where the school's at right now. I'm kind of just in limbo and figuring out the next kind of approach to help it grow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, unfortunately, I had the same realization, like producing content is awesome and
Yeah.
is rewarding and gives its own gifts, but unfortunately, the marketing piece is as important. I would say 50-50,
Mm-hmm.
as important as producing the content at all. Because, unfortunately, if I create these podcast episodes, but I don't post about them, they get about half the amount of views that they would get, half the amount of downloads. And over
Mm-hmm.
the course of, a couple months, you see like a systematic trend downwards in listens overall if you don't post about them. So it's something, unfortunately, I've had to learn to a
Yeah.
bit. The marketing is
Well,
as
yeah, you
important
have to
as
tell
getting
people
the
you've made
best guest
something in
that you could
order for
ever
them
imagine. It
to
just
find
doesn't
it,
matter
but
if you don't
we'll get there. We have like
put it
tons of
everywhere you
content with our
can.
blogs
The
now.
distribution
I just
is
have to tell the people. So,
really one of the first biggest issues to creating consistency and monetization. So I still haven't figured it out yet. So if you figure it out, let me know. Um,
and that's too like just what we're trying to do with Kilo. So
yeah,
I have a community calendar on there, which is essentially my vision is that like instead of you
yeah,
being on like
yeah.
20 mailing
I,
lists for
I
like
understand. I'm in the same
SFPE
place,
or
struggling to get the
different
word out
groups to
and
find out when their
consistently
education
market
is,
and
like you
get
can just go to our
creative
community
about,
calendar.
letting everybody know what's
We had it
happening.
going for a
But
while
that's
and
cool
then
to
it was
hear,
put on
though.
the back burner, but I'm getting some support actually from the Saskatchewan Building Officials Association. So I'm in Saskatchewan, and they're an amazing association. So they're going to help me out with their admin staff to kind of populate that, which is super cool. But then in terms of like I have a lot of ideas to rework the website. But Jim Burns, who's one of our villagers, has actually written 2 posts about different podcasts in the industry. But I'm on my like mind map of how to reorganize the website. It's like it's its whole own page is like podcasts where people can go and learn. So when I get there, we'll put yours up on the top. So hopefully more people find woohoo. And if anyone's listening, if you have Kilo on 2 or more times, you can get the top row. I don't know. Yeah. of the imaginary page. But soon I'll get there. You can see it with me. You're a visionary.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. That's right. There's the criteria. Let them know. Hey, hey,
Your
I'm
anchor.
happy to be on top of the imaginary page. That sounds good. Yeah, it's all about,
Yeah, that's
projecting
hilarious.
out for the future and, thinking about these big concepts. I'm lucky because the people I work
Yeah.
now at the new venture I'm involved with, they're good at, snatching me down up out of the clouds if I start like floating away on ideas that are too big to be actionable. So I
Yeah,
love
it's super. Yeah,
pontificating
I'm
and
really
musing
excited right
and
now. We're just in
kind
the
of
process of
making
kind of
big
figuring out what
dreams or
this new
big plans
partnership
too.
looks
So that's
like
awesome. I like hearing
with my
about how to
brother-in-law and
get
other
creative
people who are
with
joining our teams kind of in
web
their
content
areas of
or just
expertise.
how
So we're
to
just
really
figuring out
make
how
it
we
easier
kind
for
of like,
people to
split
learn
up
and
the
be
business and make
involved
it
and
possible.
build
But I'm hoping
community
within the
in
next
fire and
like
life
month and a
safety.
half,
So it's
we'll
really neat to
be
hear.
kind of sharing that news out on our social media and on LinkedIn. So you'll have to stay tuned because, yeah, and it's people who are, um, bring me down out of the clouds. So it's a definitely a needed part and something that I've been missing for a while. So
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I feel that. Well, so we talked about the museum. We've talked about your action in Kilo Lima. What about your consulting journey over the last 2 years?
yeah,
What
so
kind
it's
of
consulting.
occupancy specific work have
Code
you been
consulting is super
involved with, or
interesting because
what parts of consulting
in
have you really
BC and
resonated with, and
Ontario,
what parts
like you
of
have
consulting have you really
there's just a
found to
lot more
be
resources out there. So when
not
I was
interesting
with
to you? I'd love
Celerity,
to
the
hear
first
about that as
consulting
somebody who
company,
spends
out of
a
BC,
large
like
amount of
almost
their time
every
doing these kind of
big-ish
things.
project had a co-consultant because there was, the project values were a lot higher and co-consulting's just been around there for since the mid 80s, maybe earlier. I totally made that date up. But it's kind of a standard thing out there. Like I remember in Saskatchewan here when I was worked for the municipality, I didn't even know there was code consultants because it just wasn't a thing here. So here, like the designers would kind of be the ones responsible for code compliance. And there's a bit of history kind of in the smaller jurisdictions, not just in Saskatchewan, but even like in BC, some of the smaller jurisdictions where you don't have a lot of resources for enforcement of the code. A lot of the um, like if it's not enforced, people aren't held accountable, and a lot of times it's just not done, which is super. It's just a real problem, and kind of behind Kilo is that like why do the more resourced provinces have safer buildings? To me, it's bullshit. So that's what I'm trying to change. But back to the question. So I was consulting out of BC. A lot of projects I'd be on, like they were great. We had great clients. A lot of residential out there, like multi-unit residential. I worked on some schools. The schools were probably my favorite to work on. Kind of like I like the assembly spaces when you can kind of imagine what's going to be going on there. Um, Residential was kind of all the same, so it wasn't very exciting. Not a fan of industrial, probably just because, being in a warehouse doesn't light me up, so I can't really get that excited about it. So probably I worked on a few really, really cool schools out there. Saskatchewan's completely flat and prairie, so a few of the schools were the one was a private school that like looked out onto the ocean and had this amazing design, and so those were really cool ones. But a part of the problem too out there was I had a few projects where they had a co-consultant just because that's what you do out there. But a lot of the issues I'd flag, the designers like, oh, they don't require that in the municipality, even though the code did. So essentially, because the municipality where the project was didn't have good enforcement, the designers kind of avoided the requirements, which was just a real big shock to me. And it's interesting because like a code consultant here, like unless we're sealing an alternative solution or something outside of code, the code consultant's not really responsible for anything. They're more not responsible. They're responsible for code, but they just support the architect. So the architect's the one who has to sign off on the life safety requirements. So like we always said, like you can take a horse to the water, but you can't force them to drink. So as a co-consultant, you highlight the issues, but at the end of the day, if the architect or engineer doesn't want to do it, they just go ahead and submit the plans, if that makes sense. So I had a few of those that just really sat very poorly with me. And so it's kind of then that I knew that it just wasn't like the end game for me. Like consulting wasn't really my jam. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the stuff I worked on when I worked with Celerity out there. Was mostly projects in Vancouver or BC as a consultant, and then also as an independent professional leading a few projects. So on federal land or reserve land where there isn't a kind of like an AHJ. Some of the locations out there would hire an independent professional to kind of recommend a building permit. So they would do what an AHJ would, but they weren't actually the AHJ. They were just hired by the owner out there.
That's interesting. That's a really different dynamic. I mean, like, I guess in the US, there are instances in which the fire protection engineer is not the one signing the life safety drawing. So it would be very similar. Code consulting services would be very similar in that we would oftentimes be contracted to review and provide insight, but it is at the end of the day the discretion of the architect to seal those life safety sheets. So I definitely know what you're saying about making comments or communicating about code requirements, and then either gray areas being used or jurisdictional preference or absence of enforcement being something that plays a part. But yeah, I think that's an interesting topic. At one of my previous roles, there was a certain pieces of code that was like there's like a forward flow test connection for a sprinkler system, and it's required in the code, and they don't allow you to basically manipulate the system, manipulate the check
Mm-hmm.
valve in order to function as this test connection. But in the jurisdiction I was working in, nobody had ever even seen this forward flow connection. And, I spent like a year working, and I installed a bunch of
Yeah, it's
sprinkler systems,
interesting.
and
Like
nobody
yeah,
ever
that's what,
even
like where
talked
I
about
started
this
was on the enforcement side, and
test connection that's clearly
it's
required in
interesting.
the
Like I
code.
always say,
So it's like,
everybody should work for the city
who's at
in
fault
any
here? Is it
department
the
for at least
designers
like a
who know
year to
better, or is it
understand kind of
the
how
code
just
enforcement
how
who's
things
not
work. So if you look
requiring
at
it?
like
I
a
mean,
code enforcer, like when I was
it's
there,
that's a
I
sticky
was responsible
situation.
for
So
building code
I see
compliance,
what you're
but
saying.
the building code references a bajillion different standards. So it's literally impossible. And two, with like very limited education on all these standards and even the code. So like to expect someone to know the codes, all the standards, um, also like review the plans, inspect the buildings, but stay on top of education it's like it's impossible. But people don't really realize that. So on the design side, it's like, oh, well, it got through the city. Well, you're still responsible as a designer, and the owner is ultimately responsible. But it's this weird thing where people think, if the city didn't catch it, it's okay. But if you look at the enforcement, and a lot of times they're so under resourced, like here a lot of the smaller jurisdictions, like your building official is also your fire official and the volunteer fire department. So to expect them to have building code knowledge and then sprinkler standard knowledge and alarm standard knowledge, and it's the whole building, so it's siding knowledge and shingle knowledge, like it's impossible. But there's kind of this, like, I don't know if people actually think they know, like the city should know all the rules, or they just really haven't stopped and thought about how impractical it is. Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of crazy to think that, somebody who's not doing this. I mean, I am in the
Mm-hmm.
process of consulting on a daily basis for, 6 plus years, 7 plus years. And it's like, there are still so many
Mm-hmm.
things that I don't know. Like, how can you expect a building code official who, they see a lot and they see a wide variety of things, but they don't get
Mm-hmm.
to design these things from soup to nuts. So it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a tall order. And yeah, that excuse of, oh, well, the AHJ said it was fine, why do you have a problem with it, is like, well, it's
And I think
wrong
it's just
in the
like
codes and
an
standards.
education
And
and
so I think
awareness
that's
thing, and
reason
a
enough,
whole,
right?
like,
I get it that
to
it
me,
wasn't caught by
ultimately,
the
like the
AHJ,
owners
but
hire these
that's a really
professionals,
poor
but they're so
excuse.
unaware
I don't know.
that the city's
But yeah, I totally
actually
understand
there
what you're
to
saying.
protect them. Like
It's a lot.
the
It's a tall
designers tell them,
order
oh, the
for
city's
building
holding it up, or the
enforcement to
city's requiring this.
be
But
able to
really,
capture all
the
of that.
enforcement is making sure the rules are met. So I think if owners were better educated in terms of kind of the city's a service and they're holding your designers accountable, um, the whole dynamic would change. Like they'd now be questioning the designers on why it's held up at the city, because it's not going to be held up if everything's perfect. So I think like that's a huge missing piece of the whole puzzle, is just owner education, on kind of the process, but also their responsibility. So I don't know how it is down there, but like in Saskatchewan here, under legislation, the owner is the one who's ultimately responsible for code compliance. So like if something happens in their building, they don't get to say, oh well, like it went through the city. That's not how how it works. So to me, that's like probably the biggest issue we face, is just owners have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 definitely. That's the same way
Hmm.
here as the fire and life safety systems are really the
Yeah, one of
building
our
owner's
courses actually, we just have the
responsibility.
three up
And
now,
so
but the
those
one is specifically
inspection
for
testing and maintenance records,
like
those
ITM,
like
inspection,
that the
testing, and
building doesn't
maintenance,
have
and
any
it's
red
focused
tags
on
from the authority
owners.
having
And so he goes
jurisdiction,
through
like
kind of the
that
responsibilities,
is
what's
on
required by
the building
code,
owner.
but also
So
he
I
highlights
think,
like, hey, these are red
yeah, that
flags to
piece
look
of
for when
it
someone verifies your system.
is
Um,
interesting.
I don't know if all provinces up here have the issue, but like the standard says, a competent person shall inspect or verify. I don't know the wording, but when you don't have kind of the system in place to say what a competent person is, you have people who probably shouldn't be inspecting and installing that are inspecting and installing. And without kind of the system to say this is what makes you competent, there's just a lot of shady work that goes on, and owners just have no idea. They find the cheapest person, not realizing that they did cheap work and there's a bunch of issues, but without owners knowing what to look for, that's just how it goes. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think minimum qualifications is definitely an issue everywhere. And like having people who are not just pencil whipping inspection reports, and like the one of the biggest areas I see it is like fire extinguisher
That's useful.
inspections, and like just
Yeah.
getting anybody you can find to go and
Yeah, totally.
um, you know inspect these vessels,
But
but
people
not
don't even
really
like, they don't
doing the job. And
like,
I've been in
probably when
facilities
you ask them
before
that, they're like,
where
oh
it's
crap,
like the
like I
fire
never thought of that.
extinguisher
Of
is
course
in
it
a
should be
locked
unlocked.
cabinet,
But
and I'm
a
like,
lot of times, like
isn't
when
the
it's not
whole reason
people's
for this thing to
in
be
people's
available
awareness,
for
like they
use?
just
Like, why is it even
have
here if
no
you're going to lock it
idea.
in a
And
cabinet? That
so
makes
it's
zero
not,
sense
sometimes
to
it's
us.
not
Like,
people being malicious or
um,
doing
yeah, I think,
something they shouldn't be. It's just like they really don't think of it. Like no one there maybe looked at it being locked up and was like, hey, I couldn't get that out in a fire. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so and that's why, like, so our blog,
right, or maybe
we
that
have a lot
cabinet
that get into
wasn't
the nitty gritty,
anticipated for
but a
fire
lot of our,
extinguishers and was
like,
just selected for some other reason.
I
Or
don't, a
yeah, and
lot.
you
Some of
let
our
people know,
blogs
and
are
then
meant kind of just
it's
to move
it's
people
met with
from
like,
unknown
oh yeah, I
unknowns
didn't know,
to
or
known
people are like,
unknowns.
no,
So
no, it's
things that aren't
okay.
even
Like
within their
it's not
awareness,
okay.
to be like,
But
hey, this is a problem. Who do I contact? Or at least getting it on their to-do list. Because if it's an unknown, it's just nothing's ever going to change. So some of our blogs are kind of geared specifically towards owners, and to kind of just bring things into their awareness that they could be missing and kind of how to approach that. Because that's something too that I think is just really missing in the industry. It's like we tell owners, hey, you need to do this and this, but they don't have good tools to, select good people for verification, or, you know what I mean? So it's just this huge gap.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to give a shout out to Jeff Moore,
Amazing.
one of
What's his
the
name?
latest
Jeff
podcast
Moore?
guests we had on, and he
Okay.
worked for an insurance company for a really long time, and he created a book and a training course called Industrial Fire Control Concepts. and he really geared it towards building owners or like building management personnel. And so, Jeff Moore, I'll send you a link, and I can send you some more info. But he
Mm-hmm.
just reproduced like and brought out the third edition of this industrial fire control
Mm-hmm.
concepts. And so his whole thing was like he would teach a course on and these fire safety concepts at a really high level, but then the building
Absolutely.
owner representatives, they would leave the course and be like, well, how am I supposed to remember you know A to Z on 6 different types of fire and life safety systems? How am I supposed to make educated decisions? And so
Oh,
that is
he's
why he
number one on
made
my
this
list now
book.
to
And so
to
I
reach
think
out to, because
if
that's
you're
too like our
looking to
courses on
recommend
Kilo.
something
What
to
I want is
people
that like people
who
walk away
are,
with either
looking
a
to have
checklist
some
or a
sort
cheat
of
sheet
entry
on what they
level
just learned.
resource
Because to me, like
for
you go to, there's like
that kind of
40 people on a
information
webinar and
based on
everyone
fire
learns
and life
something, but
safety
then
competence
everyone's taking
information. I
their
think
own notes and making their
it's
own
a
cheat
good one
sheets.
to pick up.
And
It's
it's
got a
like that
lot of
is
nice
so inefficient. Like if your short little course just has a cheat sheet that people can have on them or a checklist, and then like why would everyone be doing that individually? It's just really dumb. So I love that he's made like, broken down into tools, because that's what the end user needs, is the tools to implement what they learn. And it's such a gap. Like with, you have codes and standards, which are great, but without tools for like the enforcement to use, then nothing gets enforced and nothing gets done. So it's like that's what Kilo 2 is all about,
yeah
is trying to bridge that gap, and make, yeah, because it shouldn't be so hard. And
yeah
like safe buildings shouldn't be limited to projects with money that can hire a co-consultant. I think that's bananas. So
yeah yeah
hmm.
yeah I agree that. Yeah, or code consultants that, have just the kind of closely held knowledge base that is all this very system specific
Mm.
criteria. So I think that, developing these tools and taking different kind of um,
Hmm.
things that we can learn from other industries like tech,
Yeah.
where they are really good at um, marketing
Yes.
and making tools and making things digestible and focusing on learning and
Yeah.
like, not putting up barriers and making it as inclusive as possible. Like, I think that that is something that's great. Another shout out is to, what Joe Meyer's doing. And I've always loved those PDF cut sheets that he puts out for different design topics. Um, that's something I'd like to, lean into myself as far as like, quick, approachable things that you can use as
Yeah,
teaching
Myers Fire, like
resources
it
and
was,
that you can have a
I started
conversation
following
about.
it like back when I
Because,
was in
when you're trying to
AHJ,
explain
and
something
I
like
think I
this
found it
to
because
somebody,
I was
it's
learning the
really
building code.
difficult
I
to
got the
convey
job in
a
the building
point without
department.
an
When I
illustration
had
or
never
something
looked
to
at the
base it
building
off.
code.
I
I
think
didn't
that
know there was a
really
building code. Like, it made
does
sense,
a lot
but I never
for
looked at it.
the
And so I
teaching
think like I was
piece.
reading the code. I was like, what is a standpipe? So I Googled what is a standpipe, and this his great blog article through Meyer Fire came up. So um, anyways, that's how I started kind of learning about it. Because although he's in America, like this, the Canadian code references the same sprinkler standards. It's different for alarms, but the sprinklers and standpipe standards are the same. And so it was really the inspiration behind Keel. Like he's grown his community over the years. He's got the cheat sheets, and really digestible information. And are you aware that he's like now doing his Meyer Fire University? Have you seen? Yeah, it's like yeah, it's it's pretty slick. I'm actually I've done one of the modules. So I did the what is the difference between a job and a
Yeah,
career?
yeah.
And
I
I added
I want to sign
what
up
is the
for it
difference between a
because
job, a
like
career, and a
even though
soul
I'm
path.
7
So
years in or
I have
8
a
years in,
module on there,
I'm
and then I'm
still
hoping
want to
to
learn
develop
like
more. But
more and all these
he had
great
kind of an instructor
concepts and
session the other day
visuals.
and
Like
showed us
I'm pretty
like the
excited
videos
about
are
that. And
amazing. They're like 3 to 8 minutes. He has different professionals. He's done like probably half of them because education's his shtick and he's really good at it, but bringing in different professionals and so it's a voiceover, but he has like his like sketch artists sketch with visuals to go along with what people are saying. Like they're so good. And there's also these, I don't know what he calls them, workshops or modules. Anyways, it's like problem solving. So like there's a problem and then you have to like email the building official and the building official gets back to you. And it's kind of like this choose your own adventure for the tech side. So like really cool things to reach kind of the different way people learn. Like a lot of people are visual learners or they have to work through the problems to learn. Some people like to read, but I love what he's done in terms of kind of the whole adult education too, and reaching people just in different ways. That's how you kind of, people learn the most is, I don't know, there's 4 different learning types or something. Maybe that's wrong, but his platform kind of reaches all of them. So it's really awesome. This is not a paid advertisement for Firefire. I just really like what he's doing. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I think that,
Totally.
yeah,
And he's also just
I'm
like an
sure all
amazing
100.
human too. So
Yeah, I mean, I get
he's
it.
created this
Joe is a
community, but
big was a
also
big
like
inspiration
he's
for
someone
me
you want to
to get
support.
into the
So
podcast
yeah,
as
I love
well.
what
So
he's
I mean, I
doing.
think we both took a look at what Joe was doing. It was like, man, that's cool. We're like to expand on that and like riff on this idea, and so I think that's great. But
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah. I love to talk. So these are this is the kind of work I like to do is
yeah, for
just
sure,
talking
I'm
to
totally
people.
on
So
board. I'm
no, I don't
totally on
know.
board. But
Thank you for
anyways,
having
Miss
me back.
Kelsey,
It's
well, is
crazy
there
actually when
anything
you
else
said it's
that you would
been
like
two
to talk
years.
about or promote as we're
And what's
getting
changed
close
since
to
then?
the
Like
end here?
probably
Thank you
most
so
things
much
in my
for
life.
speaking with me. It's been an absolute
And it's
pleasure.
great to hear what you're up to now. And I love your shift to the smaller company. We were chatting before started recording, but it's so exciting, I think, especially for someone like you who's like me and likes that just being at a place where you can, your ideas have more of an impact in a smaller group. So, yeah, I don't know. It's been really great to catch up. So, thanks for having me. Hmm.
Yeah, that's no problem. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And yeah,
Hmm.
good to talk with somebody
Yeah.
who's
And I guess
entrepreneurial
just
minded
promote
and
Kilo Lima. Go
likes
check
dreaming
out
big. That's what I think is fun also.
kilolimaCode.com.
And that's funny that you say like the
Yeah,
ideas have an impact because I may not always
absolutely.
explicitly think
Yeah.
of that as like one of the
Hmm.
reasons, but it definitely is like a big deal to
Hmm.
me. So I feel seen in that regard. But yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And also, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and I use it.
That's
LinkedIn's
right.
really
That's
how
right. And
I've
then that's where people
networked
can
for
find you
most
and
of
reach out
Kilo.
if
Is
they want to
just
be
if
a
someone looks like
villager or if
they're
they
into
would like
code
to
education,
contribute
I
to
just hound
coursework
them
or if they would
until they
just like
talk
to
to me
drop you a
and
line and say
get them
they
on
like
board
what
to
you're
either be a
doing
villager
or
or
anything
kind
like
of
that.
just
That's
tell
where
them
they can
about what we're
go and
doing
drop
and
you a contact.
they'll recommend me to other things. So yeah, either through the website or LinkedIn. And I love to kind of connect with people and talk about ideas, how we can make the world a safer place. Not to get too cheesy, but Yeah, that's me. Totally.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and
I'll
standards
take the cheese. You
interpretation.
gotta
Be
have a
sure
little
to
cheese.
contact a
You gotta have a
licensed
little cheese.
professional if you are
But
getting
sounds
involved
good.
with
All right.
fire
Well, we
protection
got
and
it.
or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.